Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. A couple of you guys sent me some messages saying that I should take a look at this video from IGN that just dropped a couple of days ago. It's basically saying that all PlayStation games, all first-party PlayStation games, have the exact same story and that it's getting repetitive and boring. I don't know. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video. It's got 37,000 views in 3 days. That's pretty good. Yeah, let's get right into it.
I'm a huge fan of PlayStation's first-party offerings. They've come to embody the sort of cinematic adventures I've always looked for when sitting down with a controller in my hand, feeling like genuine blockbuster events meant to be savoured. But where in the past this brand of glossy storytelling felt like new ground being trodden, I can't help but feel that recently it's become the well-worn road. It's not just that all of PlayStation's major releases adhere to the now trademarked third-person cinematic stylings. It's that the stable of developers has become seemingly obsessed with stories that explore the exact same themes, grief and revenge. And I'm starting to get a little tired of it. As a rule, these games are all impeccably well made, but I'm starting to miss that era when PlayStation's range felt wider and things were a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I can see that. For sure. All these games tend to have kind of the same subplot, don't they? Different settings, but the same subplot. Yeah, that makes sense so far. Written by Simon Cardy.
The realization that so many PlayStation games have explored the same grim story themes struck me when playing through Sucker Punch's new Ghost of Yotei. While I thoroughly enjoyed it and admire its consistently exciting approach to combat and genuine sense of discovery it creates for exploration, I couldn't help but feel I'd been told its story before. As Atsu, you're tasked with avenging the death of your parents on a blood-soaked journey across 17th century Japan, as you hunt down each of the Yotei Six. Not only is this tale unfortunately close to the plot of Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I also played to completion earlier this year, but it's the same combination of fiery revenge arc crossed with meditations on what it is to grieve that has become something of a hallmark for PlayStation Studios in recent years.
And Assassin's Creed Shadows also taking place in feudal Japan, so you can definitely see the similarities there.
I'm sorry it came to this, little wolf.
2019's The Last of Us Part 2 is an obvious trailblazer, with Ellie's dark descent into a rage-filled embodiment of revenge coming as a result of the death of her father figure Joel. That, of course, was the sequel to the 2013 original that explored how Joel struggled to cope with the death of his own daughter.
Oh yeah.
At the time, The Last of Us was seen as fueling a wave of sad dad games, including 2018's God of War. But in hindsight, these were just the building blocks for PlayStation's preoccupation with grief.
Find your way home.
Okay, Triple H.
You are free.
2022's God of War Ragnarok is a story fueled by the loss of mothers and sons and the anger that comes with them. Insomniac's Spider-Man series follows both Peter Parker and Miles Morales as they attempt to overcome supervillain threats, as well as wrestle with their demons stemming from dead parental figures.
She never thought about herself, even when she was struggling to breathe.
2020's Returnal is a looping sci-fi nightmare born out of the protagonist Celine's familial grief-related trauma. And then there's 2025's other big PlayStation exclusive Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, which may not technically be a first-party game, but certainly is a verifiable feast of maternal and paternal anguish.
And
don't get me wrong, I'm a fan
now.
of all the games listed above. Each singular in its depictions of characters and each offering wildly different gameplay experiences. But when viewed as a whole, it's easy to hear that their stories are all being sung from the same hymn sheet. Familial grief is at the centre of all of these stories, and while I certainly feel that mature themes have a place in games, it is all starting to feel like I'm getting hit around the head with the same ideas at this point. The cycle of violence is in very real danger of becoming a loop of diminishing returns.
You gutted my father.
He defied Lord Saito.
Then you tried to burn me alive.
Of course, it's true that not every PS5 game follows this pattern. Astro Bot isn't an exploration of generational trauma in deep space.
Well, that's because it's a 3D platformer aimed at children. Of course it's not going to have that plot.
But you catch my drift. I think that's incidentally what I enjoyed so much about Team Asobi's Ode to PlayStation of old, with its joy and colour standing out from the otherwise morose crowd. It
That game
felt
would've fit
like
right
a
in on
rarity,
anything Nintendo.
but
It
it
was
never used to be
great
this
game.
way. The PS3 gave us Naughty Dog's Uncharted era, which, although it eventually ventured into more melancholic territory in A Thief's End, firmly planted its flag in themes of adventure
Very
with a
Indiana
tone ripped
Jones.
from the pages of Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, sure. Indiana Jones for sure.
I've always
Or
had a
maybe he
soft
just meant
spot
Pulp
for
Fiction in
Insomniac's
general.
Resistance and its World War
Not the
II
movie.
/ sci-fi warfare mashup, as well as Little Big Planet, which, all the way at the other end of the tonal spectrum, celebrated creativity and community.
Welcome to Bunkum Chummy Chum Chum, where the sky is strewn with circling clouds.
Yeah, you're seeing like such the diversity that was there during the PS3 and early PS4 of just ideas and games in general, completely different from what was just being talked about at the very beginning.
Of imagination.
Yes, these games all contained varying levels of character nuances, but were all fundamentally about different things.
Absolutely
Treasure
different.
hunting, alien invasions, and personal expression. They weren't all trying to serve the same story, and I can't help but feel that if a new Jak and Daxter game were to come out today, it would
It'd
be
be
about
sad.
an Otzel's thirst for revenge against the killers of his blonde-haired friend.
Hang on, Dax. It's gonna be
Don't give
close.
him
I hope that
ideas.
future PlayStation exclusives can look to this more varied, interesting past for inspiration, even when choosing to tackle more serious subject matters. Team Ico's PS2 classic Shadow of the Colossus took on a
what a great
mournful
game.
tone, but found something truly unique and poignant within it, at a time when such ideas were far less common in games.
They were fresh. Now it's just rinse, wash, repeat.
It stands as a unique masterpiece to this day, telling its tale through vagaries and minimal cutscenes, a far cry from the trademark cinematic style we now expect of PlayStation games. What we didn't have back in the mid-2000s were 5 more PS2 releases that took its exact contemplations on love and loss and told the same story in a different wrapping.
Yeah,
Every
for
time you
sure.
played something new from Sony Studios on the now 25-year-old console, it felt like a brand new experiment with a different story to tell, not just a variation on a theme.
There was nothing
That brings
like
me back
Shadow
to
of the
Ghost of
Colossus.
Yotai, a game that is superior to its predecessor in almost every aspect, barring its central story.
My name is Atsu.
While I connect to Atsu more than I ever did Jin Sakai, she's a much warmer presence to spend a few dozen hours with. Ghost of Tsushima's narrative explores different, fresher ground. The story balances the personal struggles of Jin against the backdrop of an invasion of a nation, with themes of honor, betrayal, and belonging striking a chord and making it stand out when it arrived hot on the heels of The Last of Us Part 2 in 2020, before
Right.
grief seemingly took hold of every Sony storyteller. Perhaps PlayStation's interest in grief is a reflection of the state of the world, though. When viewed through the lens of when PS5 exclusives like Ghost of Yotai and Death Stranding were being written, that melancholy is somewhat understandable. The COVID pandemic inarguably took hold of our planet in the years 2020 and 2021. And as such, themes surrounding unexpected loss and mass trauma would no doubt have been at the forefront of many minds.
Now that sounds like a stretch, perhaps, but maybe it's the makers of the games are completely, taken over. Especially if this is what they're saying, that at the time of the COVID virus or whatever, that this is when all of this stuff was going down, and that's why everybody was melancholy. Then perhaps a lot of those people were a little bit more on the woke side of things when it came to writing these stories. Because let me tell you, rinse, wash, repeat, and Sony really hasn't had that many exclusives in the last 2.5 years. I don't know.
It will therefore be intriguing to see if this pattern will continue much further then, now that the world
I should
has
say first
somewhat
party.
settled back into what it looked like beforehand. Will the stories being told in projects that began production post-2022 mirror a different state of the planet, or continue to look inside ourselves at our darkest moments? These are, of course, all valid tales to tell, and I'm a huge proponent of art being reflections of those creating it, but I can't help but wish for a little more variety going forward.
I will find every last member of the Yote Six.
I mean, and to be fair, this didn't really affect all the other studios out there. There is so much variety when it comes to first party studios, even if you may not like all that stuff, but Microsoft's first party stuff was all over the place. Indiana Jones, you got Starfield, you got Forza, you got a ton of variety in there. And then Nintendo's first party is all over the place as well, with Legend of Zelda and Metroid and Animal Crossing and the Marios. And I mean, so not everything was melancholy. They had variety. It's seems like Sony specifically amongst all of their studios are kind of just rehashing that same formula. You know, and it's great because not saying that these games don't have amazing gameplay mechanics, it's just the same stuff over and over again. And that's not good when you're only bringing out
There's a reason to be hopeful
or two
and
games a year.
skeptical, considering what Sony has coming up next. Insomniac's Wolverine looks to be delivering on all of the gore and decapitation you'd hope to see, but will that
Absolutely.
mature rating be reflected in its themes?
That's always waiting.
Logan is certainly a character consumed by lust for revenge.
I can live with Wolverine following that formula because it's very much alike the character in the book, and he's lost and all of that stuff. So for him, it absolutely makes sense. Unfortunately, it will fall into that trope that they've been doing for the last generation.
Will that see us taken down a familiar path of burying past demons through ultra-violence? Or will we get an altogether different story that taps into a different part of his psyche? James Mangold's Logan already told us a tale that would have slotted nicely into PlayStation's sad dad canon.
That's probably where
as
we're going.
X-23 tapped into the softer side of his adamantium body. So I do hope we don't just get a rerun of that idea here. We also know that Saros is on the way from Housemarque in March, and it certainly looked impressive
successor.
in the most recent State of Play stream. As for Naughty Dog, the ground zero of this long-running era of grief, we know that the studio will be taking on the sci-fi realm next with Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. Its first trailer was promising, delivering a more fun-filled tone than we'd ever dream of seeing from The Last of
I like
Us.
the setting.
Of course, we've barely scratched the surface here, but it would be fantastic to see Naughty Dog rediscovering some of that Uncharted levity here. Both of these upcoming PS5 games, incidentally, are stories about people investigating lost
Sometime in
off-world colonies.
2026.
I hope for my sake that they find wildly different stories to tell on each of them, rather than discover reminders of the grief they've left behind.
But after every death, I always come back stronger.
For more on Ghost of Yotai, make sure to check out our review, and for everything else, keep it locked to IGN.
Well, there you go, guys. That's the video. Go make sure leave them a like over on their channel on IGN. Ghost of Yotai. With the name of the video is "I'm getting bored of every PlayStation game telling the same story." I'm gonna say I agree about 80% of what they said on there. Again, not slamming on any of those games. All those games tend to be of the highest qualities, but at the same time, yeah, they do fall into the same tropes, and Sony has been, in my opinion, this is their worst generation, from PS1 through PS5. This is by far their worst generation as far as first-party offerings. It's just, it hasn't lived up to its potential, and we're almost done with this console generation. We're already talking about PlayStation 6, and yeah, I would say I had a PS5 and I sold it, and it didn't live up to the hype. There's nothing on there that I can't get elsewhere. Same experience. Hell, I can even take most of those games portably now with Switch 2 and some miracle ports that happen to make it over to Switch 1. But as always, I want to thank you guys for joining me here on the channel. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. Do you guys agree with that? That Sony's just been kind of redoing the same thing over and over? Or do you not agree? And do you think that those games all stand individually and are completely different, from each other in every single way? Leave a like, if you like the video, dislike the video if you didn't like it, and subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment below. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me here on the channel, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.